Tommy Rich just dropped a list of 7 wrestlers he absolutely hates, and fans are losing their minds over it. The reactions are wild. The stories behind these names are even crazier. So let's take a breath, settle in, and see why these names have everyone talking nonstop. 1. Buzz Sawyer. Tommy Rich and Buzz Sawyer had a hatred that felt real, like two guys who just couldn't stand each other no matter what. When fans talk about true grudges in wrestling, this one always shows up, because nothing about it felt fake. Their feud in Georgia Championship Wrestling stretched on for almost 2 years, and every time they got in the ring, it turned into something wild. It wasn't just about wrestling moves or who won the match. It felt like they were trying to prove something, trying to break each other down both physically and mentally. You could see it in the way they swung at each other and hear it in the way they talked before every match. Tommy Rich was the fiery, determined babyface, the guy the crowd always wanted to see rise back up. Buzz Sawyer was the opposite, a tough, unpredictable brawler who looked like he came into every fight with bad intentions. Sawyer had this mean edge that never went away, and Rich had the heart that refused to crack, which made the feud even more intense. When those two personalities clashed, it turned ugly fast. Almost every match ended in chaos, with punches that looked too stiff, brawls that spilled everywhere, and moments where the line between scripted and real blurred. What really fueled the hatred was how different they were at their core. Tommy had that energy that made crowds love him. He was loud, passionate, and always fighting back. Sawyer, though, carried himself like he didn't care about being liked. Many wrestlers from that time even said Buzz was a handful backstage, which just added to the feeling that he wasn't playing a character. He was just being himself. So when he stepped into the ring with Tommy, it felt like there was no acting. It was two men with real heat, both pushing each other further every week. All that tension eventually exploded in 1983 with the Last Battle of Atlanta, a cage match that still gets talked about today. This wasn't just a cage match. It was a final fight meant to trap them together with no escape. Once that door shut, everything that had built up over 2 years came pouring out. It was brutal, it was messy, and it was exactly the kind of ending a feud this hateful needed. 2. Ole Anderson. Tommy Rich and Ole Anderson never saw eye to eye, and honestly their hatred felt real from the moment they started crossing paths in the Georgia territory. Tommy was the young, fiery babyface that fans loved, and Ole was the grumpy, hard-edged veteran who didn't like anyone getting in his way, especially someone as popular as Tommy. The tension wasn't just about wrestling stories. It felt personal, like Ole saw Tommy as a threat, and Tommy saw Ole as someone who constantly tried to hold him down. Back in Georgia Championship Wrestling, Ole Anderson was part of the tough, no-nonsense Minnesota Wrecking Crew. He carried himself like the gatekeeper of the territory, the guy who decided who deserved to rise and who didn't. When Tommy Rich got hot with the crowd, Ole didn't handle it well. He made things rough for Tommy in the ring, and Tommy fired right back. Their matches felt stiff, heated, and way more emotional than a normal wrestling feud. It looked like every punch had some extra steam behind it, and every glare between them said, "I don't like you." Tommy was all heart, running at Ole with passion, speed, and that never-give-up attitude. Ole was the total opposite. He wrestled like a bully, slow and grinding, trying to shut Tommy down at every turn. That clash of styles made the hatred stand out even more. Anytime Tommy started gaining steam, Ole would cut him off and drag the match into a fight. And the fans felt that. They could see Ole refusing to give Tommy even an inch, and they could see Tommy fighting like crazy just to stay alive. Behind the scenes, people always said Ole wasn't the easiest guy to get along with. He had a reputation for being blunt, harsh, and sometimes downright mean. So when he got in the ring with someone like Tommy, who was young, energetic, and wildly popular, it only added fuel to the fire. You could tell Tommy wanted to prove himself, and you could tell Ole hated that the crowd loved him so much. 3. Ivan Koloff. Their feud in Georgia Championship Wrestling didn't feel like a simple hero versus villain story. It felt like Tommy was trying to survive against a man who enjoyed hurting people. Ivan Koloff carried himself like a tank. Everything he did looked heavy, stiff, and meant to leave a mark. And Tommy Rich hated that. Every time Ivan chopped him down or muscled him into a corner, you could see Tommy's frustration boiling. He wasn't just fighting to win, he was fighting to prove that Ivan couldn't break him, no matter how far the big heel pushed things. What made the feud feel so intense was how well their personalities clashed. Tommy was full of fire, fast punches, quick bursts of energy, and a whole lot of heart. Ivan was the opposite. He moved slowly, deliberately, and everything he did felt like it came from pure power. When they locked up, it always turned gritty. Tommy would start strong, the crowd screaming for him, and then Ivan would shut him down with one brutal shot, turning the whole match into a struggle. Fans loved Tommy because he always tried to fight back, even when someone like Ivan Koloff was tossing him around. And Ivan hated that. He wasn't the kind of heel who wanted a flashy match. He wanted to dominate. Every time Tommy popped up with his wild comeback energy, you could see Ivan get more and more annoyed. It built a tension that felt real, like these two men genuinely couldn't stand each other. Their rivalry also came at a time when Ivan was one of the territory's toughest and most feared heels. He had that reputation that made fans believe he could end someone's career if he wanted to. So watching Tommy Rich step up to him, night after night, felt personal. It felt like Tommy was trying to prove that he wasn't afraid of anyone, not even someone as rough and dangerous as Koloff. 4. Fabulous Freebirds. When Tommy crossed paths with Michael Hayes, Terry Gordy, and Buddy Roberts in Georgia, it instantly felt like a powder keg waiting to explode. The Freebirds were flashy, cocky, and always ready to gang up on someone, and Tommy Rich absolutely hated that. He was the top babyface, loved by the crowd, and the Freebirds made it their mission to knock him off that spot. What made the feud so intense was how different they all were. Tommy was fiery and emotional, feeding off the fans and fighting with heart. The Freebirds were pure chaos, loud entrances, dirty tactics, and a 3-on-1 mindset that drove Tommy crazy. Anytime Tommy gained momentum in a match, you could count on one of the Freebirds jumping in, distracting the referee, or taking a cheap shot. And it wasn't just strategy, it felt personal, like they enjoyed targeting him. Terry Gordy brought the brute force. Every time he grabbed Tommy, it looked like he was tossing around a rag doll. Buddy Roberts played the sneaky pest, always slipping in a jab or a distraction at the perfect moment to ruin Tommy's comeback. And Michael Hayes? He was the mouthpiece, the guy who mocked Tommy endlessly, waving his arms and talking trash that made fans want to see Tommy punch him right in the face. Tommy hated all three of them for different reasons, and that hate is what fueled the feud. Crowds loved watching Tommy Rich take on the Freebirds because it always felt like the odds were stacked against him. He would get fired up, start swinging, and show that classic wildfire intensity. But then here came another Freebird, ready to cut him off. The more they cheated, the more Tommy's anger grew, and the more the fans got behind him. You could feel the arena shake when Tommy made a comeback against those three, because everyone wanted to see him finally get payback. 5. Ted DiBiase. Tommy Rich's feud with Ted DiBiase in Georgia wasn't just another wrestling story. It felt like two guys who truly didn't like each other. Tommy was the wild, emotional babyface who wore his heart on his sleeve, and DiBiase was cool, sharp, and always one step ahead. That difference in personality alone created tension, but once they started trading punches and trading insults, it became clear there was real hate in the air. You could see it in their promos, you could feel it in their matches, and you could sense it from the crowd every time their names were mentioned together. Ted DiBiase wasn't the loud, flashy heel he would later become. In Georgia, he was calculated and dangerous. A guy who seemed to take pleasure in outsmarting his opponents and rubbing it in their faces. And nothing annoyed Tommy Rich more than being made a fool of, especially in front of his fans. DiBiase would pick his spots perfectly, cutting Tommy off just when he started firing up. Every match between them felt like DiBiase was trying to embarrass Tommy, and it drove Tommy crazy. That frustration turned into anger, and that anger turned into hate. Their rivalry kept building until it reached a breaking point, the famous loser leaves wrestling match. That wasn't a small stipulation. Fans knew this was serious, and Tommy felt the pressure. He didn't just want to beat DiBiase, he needed to prove he could overcome someone who always seemed to be 2 steps ahead. But DiBiase played the mind games perfectly, delivering cheap shots, bending the rules, and doing whatever it took to get the upper hand. In the end, Tommy Rich lost the match, and it felt like DiBiase had finally gotten the last laugh. But Tommy wasn't done with him, not even close. Instead of just walking away like the stipulation demanded, he slipped back into the territory wearing a mask and calling himself Mr. R. The disguise was simple, but everyone knew exactly who it was, including DiBiase. And that made the feud even hotter. DiBiase hated being mocked, and Tommy loved rubbing it in by showing he wasn't going to disappear just because of one loss. Their hatred reached a new level as Mr. R kept popping up, haunting DiBiase and making him lose focus. 6. Recognize the King Lawler. By 1987, Tommy wasn't the sweet babyface fans knew from Georgia. He had turned into a loud, cocky heel who loved stirring trouble, and nobody got under his skin more than Lawler. Memphis was Lawler's house, his territory, and Tommy hated that. He hated the cheers Lawler got, hated the respect he carried, and hated that he could never outshine him in the eyes of the fans. So when Lawler got into that huge feud with Austin Idol, Tommy Rich found the perfect opening to stick it to him. Instead of staying in his own lane, Tommy jumped right into the middle of one of the biggest storylines Memphis had ever seen. Lawler and Idol already had enough heat to melt the walls of the Mid-South Coliseum, but Tommy's involvement turned the whole thing into a firestorm. Tommy played the sneaky, backstabbing heel perfectly, always lurking around, always waiting for the right moment to hit Lawler where it hurt. And that moment came in the infamous steel cage match. Lawler was fighting Idol, the building was packed, and nobody expected the twist that came next. Tommy Rich somehow crawled up from underneath the ring, literally hiding under the ring like a snake, then slipped inside the cage and attacked Lawler when he least expected it. It was the classic dirty move that made the crowd absolutely explode with anger. Tom and Idol beat Lawler down so badly he couldn't recover, and because of that interference, Jerry, the King, Lawler lost the match and had to shave his head. Losing his hair wasn't just a simple wrestling angle. This was Memphis. Lawler was their hero, and Tommy Rich made him look vulnerable, embarrassed, and completely helpless. Fans hated Tommy for it, and that only made Tommy lean in even harder. He strutted around acting proud of what he did, smiling, bragging, and throwing Lawler's loss in everyone's face. And Lawler? He hated Tommy just as much. Their chemistry was pure fire. Every promo was filled with jabs. Every match felt physical, and every showdown felt like two men trying to settle something deeper than wrestling. 7. Austin Idol. In 1987, Tommy teamed up with Idol and their manager Paul E. Dangerously to take on Jerry, the King, Lawler, and Bill Dundee. And from the very start, the tension was off the charts. Tommy wasn't just another heel in Idol's corner. He was wild, unpredictable, and hungry to prove himself against anyone who got in his way. And Idol? He was cocky, dangerous, and loved stirring up chaos. Together, they became one of the most hated teams in Memphis, and Tommy relished every second of it. The feud wasn't subtle. Every match was brutal, and every appearance on television turned into a spectacle. Tommy hated losing control, and Idol thrived on bending the rules, which led to clashes not just with the faces, but sometimes even between themselves. They had to work together, but both men's fiery personalities often caused sparks. For the fans, it was electric. Watching Tommy throw himself into the chaos, hitting hard, yelling, and doing whatever it took to dominate the match, alongside Idol and Paulie, made them the ultimate threat. One of the standout moments of this feud was the scaffold match, which has gone down in Memphis wrestling history as one of the wildest. Tommy Rich and Austin Idol weren't just risking losses. They were literally risking their bodies, climbing high above the ring with no safety net besides each other in a thin platform. The hate in the ring was intense. Every punch, every shove, every move looked like it could end the feud, or end them, right then and there. Fans could feel the tension, and the danger made every second more intense. Tommy's wild style and Idol's calculated chaos created a perfect storm of violence that no one wanted to miss. Behind the scenes, you could tell there was real friction in how they worked together. Tommy wanted to steal the spotlight, and Idol wanted to be the main focus, which added another layer to the feud's intensity. But that friction made their matches feel alive, unpredictable, and fueled by real hatred for their opponents. And that wraps up today's video. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.